Hello everyone, I am Ankit and you are watching StudyIQ IAS English channel. Our today's video is about 5th generation fighter aircraft. I know this is a Rafale aircraft, not a 5th generation fighter aircraft, but I've put this image here to help you understand the difference between these aircrafts and these aircraft. This is a 5th generation aircraft, so you can understand the fundamental difference in the design. So what are the differences or what makes 5th generation aircraft so special? That will all be addressed in our today's video. But first, let me give you a context. Why actually are we discussing 5th generation fighter aircrafts? Now, recently, Government of India, it has planned to make its own advanced medium combat aircraft. That is India's first 5th generation fighter aircraft jet. And for that, this development hit a new milestone on Tuesday when India's Defence Minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh, he approved a program execution model for development and design of this AMCA 5th generation fighter aircraft. Here, a state-owned PSU known as Hindustan Aeronautical Limited, it will compete with other private companies either individually or in partnership with other companies to be able to manufacture these kind of aircrafts. And this is a deviation from the past. Earlier, whenever DRDO was designing any aircraft, almost invariably it was HAL that conducted the manufacturing. Now, HAL will compete with private companies whether or not will they manufacture 5th generation fighter aircraft. But before understanding 5th generation fighter aircraft, you need to understand what is the big differences from earlier fighter aircrafts and the 5th generation fighter aircraft. And I'll give you a very simple example. Suppose this is the mobile phone and I tell you this mobile phone has touchscreen. So you'll think, what is a big deal about mobile phone having a touchscreen? Even I have a mobile phone with a touchscreen, right? But let's imagine 25 years or 35 years ago, there was a very popular phone, Nokia 3310, which had a black and white screen with number of keypads on it. And the most entertaining thing that you can do on Nokia 3310 was to place Snake 2 on it, right? And compared to the mobile phones that were even available before Nokia 3310, like those chunky Motorola and Siemens phone, right? So they did not have the capability of touchscreen. They did not have the capability to serve internet over it, right? So there must have been a big technological leap that allowed mobile phone from the earlier traditional phones to become a touchscreen phone that it has become today, right? Similarly, the developments of fighter aircraft have also taken a similar trajectory. Earlier fighter aircrafts, they had much a limited capability. Now, the fighter aircrafts, particularly the 5th generation fighter aircrafts, they are much more potent, deadly and compatible, right? So in this regard, let us understand how are fighter aircrafts categorized. These are categorized in terms of generation. Now, a generational shift in fighter aircraft is said when a technological innovation becomes so good that you can't put that technology in an existing aircraft. So you start making newer aircrafts which are categorized into an aircraft of higher generation, right? So each new generation, it comes with a certain significant technological leap in terms of fighter aircraft design and development. Now, 2 points are important to note before we go forward in our discussion, that the notion of aircraft generations, it appeared in the popular lexicon only in 1990s, and it has been retrospectively applied to fighter aircrafts that were developed before 1990s. Also, there is no standard definition of what constitutes a particular generation. Rather, you also need to understand that a aircraft in a particular generation, all the aircrafts in a particular generation won't have the same capabilities. So having said that, let us try to understand the evolution in the design and development of fighter jets. We'll start off with the first generation fighter jets that appeared around the time when World War was going to an end and in the subsequent decade, right? This was the time of 1943 to 1955, and this was the time when earliest fighter jets appeared, and these were powered by jet engines, and this was the final year of World War II. And these earlier fighter jets, they were somewhat faster than the previous generation fighter aircraft that employed a piston engine configuration. So these were the first instances where fighter aircrafts were powered by jet engines. But you need to understand that their capabilities even then were still limited. They flew mostly at a subsonic speed. Subsonic speed means less than the speed of sound. Similarly, the design of these fighter aircraft, like the one you can see behind me, they were mostly aerodynamically they were inefficient as compared to the latest aircraft. Similarly, these fighter aircraft, they did not have any kind of self-protection measures like the current fighters have, and they only had a limitation that they can only be operated during the day and not in the night. Similarly, they were having basic kind of technology, that is basic avionics, that were used to fight only in a close range combat. Most of these fighter aircraft, they were not having missiles, they were only having guns in them. So basically these were basically guns that were able to fly. Understood? So these all in all were the first generation aircraft. Now a technological leap happened, and what we witnessed was development of second generation aircraft, and this happened between 1995 and 1970. Now with second generation fighter aircraft, we saw massive improvement in terms of speed, in terms of weapons that they could carry, and in terms of capabilities of softwares that they used. Now with second generation, we saw introduction of afterburners and swept winds, and these technological leaps, that is afterburners and swept winds, these allowed these aircraft to capable, or they were capable of traveling at a speed somewhat higher than the speed of sound. That is why these aircraft were the first generation aircraft that were able to flow at a higher speed, even higher than the speed of sound. But what you need to understand, they could travel at a supersonic speed only for a few moments, not all the time, right? Similarly, with development in their design using swept winds, they were quite maneuverable in nature. That is why these fighter aircrafts were able to tackle each other in the air, which means they were involved in dogfights also. Similarly, they had fire control radars, semi-active guided missiles, which made them quite accurate in terms of control and fire systems of their missiles and guns. Also, they had radar warning receivers, and therefore they were able to deploy countermeasures in case any other enemy aircraft attacked them. And that is why we saw beginning of classification of aircrafts. Earlier generation, second generation aircraft, like the one you can see behind me, is the first generation MiG-21, categorized as MiG-21F, and these were popularly called as an interceptor aircraft. Why were they called as interceptor aircraft? Because they had a fixed role to intercept enemy fighter jets, because MiG-21F were able to flow at a higher speed for a longer duration time, that is for supersonic dashes, right? So that is how we saw beginning of classification of aircrafts, calling ground bombing aircrafts, interceptor aircrafts, and therein, right? So this was second generation. Now let us understand what happened in a generation after second, that was third generation, that is in the decades of 1960s. And here four technological development happened, which helped third generation fighter aircraft to segregate from second generation fighter aircraft. First of all, the third generation fighter aircraft, they were designed with an integrated design, that is all the components were designed in togetherness, not individually, which made these aircraft much more better. Similarly, as I told you, in the second generation aircraft, they were having a fixed role, that is they were able to intercept or they were able to ground bomb, right? But these third generation aircraft, they were designed for multi-role capabilities, that they can carry a far wider range of weapons and they can carry out different kind of a mission as depending on the requirements of their respective air force. Also, the capabilities of these aircrafts improved in terms of how far they can engage their enemies by use of visual range air-to-air combat missiles, and that is why they had improved fire control radars, guided missiles, and even electronic warfare systems that allowed them to fire missiles at a much longer distances as compared to the previous generation aircrafts. And similarly, they had engines which were having turbofans, that means they can sustain a supersonic flight for much longer duration, which enabled them to carry out missions for a longer range, have a higher performance, and even better maneuverability, which means they can engage enemy aircraft with much more effectiveness and efficiency. Understood? So this was third generation aircraft. Now let us understand the most important generation of aircrafts, known as fourth generation aircrafts, and these generation of aircrafts have existed for many decades now. That is, they started to appear in 1970s and they have continued even today, that is in 2000s, right? So even you'll see most of the fighter jets that are available for different air forces, these are majorly fourth generation aircrafts. Now what you need to understand, that the time period for which they have existed, it means that even in fourth generation aircraft, there have extensive progression of technology. So the earlier fourth generation aircrafts like F-14, which the ones you saw in Top Gun the first, they had lesser capabilities as compared to the existing fifth generation or fourth generation aircrafts like F-16S, right? So even in similar generation, you can see there is a very high difference between the capabilities of current aircrafts with that of earlier fourth generation aircrafts. Now what you need to understand about fourth generation is that they played a two multi-role capabilities, that the aircraft that we have right now, Indian Air Force particularly, like Sukhoi M30, like MiG-29, these are all fourth generation aircrafts, and they can play a multiple role. They can even tackle enemy aircrafts in dogfights. They can even conduct ground bombing mission like we saw during Operation Sindoor. Similarly, Rafale also is a fourth generation aircraft, particularly a 4.5 generation aircraft, which means it has a much more capability as compared to the earlier fourth generation aircrafts, right? So that is why sometimes even fourth generation aircrafts, the much more better ones, are categorized as a 4.5 generation aircraft. Similarly, our own indigenously developed and designed Tejas is a fourth generation aircraft, right? Now what these fourth generation aircraft has, that they were built using fly-by-wire control. And what is fly-by-wire control? It improves the control of aircraft at high speed, and therefore it improves the performance of the aircraft in terms of bombing, in terms of maneuverability, and also in terms of fuel efficiency, which means these aircrafts can travel for longer duration. These aircrafts can bomb targets much away from the airports, and also they are quite effective when it comes to saving the fuel. Also, they are more high tech as compared to the earlier generation aircraft. They deploy a larger number of weapons using avionics, which is basically the software that powers the aircraft. And these were designed with some kind of a stealth principle. That is, they were made of composite construction materials, had radar absorbent paints and stealth design that made them some kind of a stealth aircraft, which means their radar signature was lesser as compared to the previous generation aircraft. But what you need to understand that these stealth principles were employed rather quite conservatively, because the technology of stealth was not developed at the time these aircrafts were being developed in their respective countries. So the next generation of aircraft, that is the fifth generation of aircraft, these are the most advanced fighter jet that are in operation, because these are the aircraft that have completely embraced the stealth technology. They have a radar signature of that of a bird, and that means that the enemy radars, enemy aircrafts, they have a problem in detecting these kind of fifth generation aircrafts. Similarly, what makes them different, that they can perform automatic functions because of the high performing computers and onboard softwares that are there in them. So that is why these fifth generation aircrafts can perform tasks automatically. They can lock into the targets automatically, and they can also employ weapons which are quite effective in countering these technologies or fighter aircrafts, right? Also, they have a capability to network. That means a fifth generation aircraft can literally talk to another fifth generation aircraft, which makes them a much more potent weapons. And that is why it helps these fifth generation aircrafts to get a complete picture of the battle space, which the earlier generation of aircrafts were not able to have. Because you understand, every aircraft has a radar, and that radar has the capability to scan everything in the 360 degree. But sometimes the aircraft don't have the ability to find what is below them. And that is where the network capabilities, that is the ability to talk with another aircraft in terms of computers, lends them the capability to have a complete picture of the battle space. Now, existing aircrafts, only 3 countries have fifth generation aircrafts with them. That is, US has 2, F-22 and F-35. Russia has a Sukhoi 57, that is 1 fifth generation aircraft. And similarly, China also has a J-20 aircraft, which is also a fifth generation aircraft. So these are currently operational fifth generation aircrafts with only 3 air forces, that is US, Russia and China. And India currently, it is in a stage of developing its own fifth generation aircraft, which means the fifth generation aircraft of India has not been even be able to reach the prototype stage. And this is where our current news, that is the development of AMCA, is very important. Why? Because you understand, India's primary threat, China has a fifth generation aircraft and India does not. That is why it leaves India's capability somewhat less as compared to Chinese aircraft. And that is why we need to develop a fighter jet, particularly a fifth generation fighter jet, on our own, so that we are able to match with the technological capabilities of Chinese Air Force, right? So in this regard, India's AMCA, Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, becomes very important, and this aircraft is being designed by Aeronautical Development Agency, which is basically a laboratory under the control of Defence Research and Development Organization. And this ADA, it is set to execute the program of manufacturing and designing AMCA with the help of industry partners. This can be HAL, this can be private players also. And that is why it is expected that ADA will shortly issue an expression of interest for the AMCA development phase, where private companies will develop prototypes based on the design of the ADA, and this prototype will be competed among themselves so that we know what is the best capable aircraft that has been designed by either HAL or by private company using the design and guidance offered by ADA, which is a laboratory of what? Laboratory of DRDA. Now let us understand what is our or will be the expected features of AMCA, right? It is expected that AMCA will be a 25-ton category aircraft, will be powered by two engines, right? That is why it will be a twin engine aircraft. Now the features prominently of AMCA, the most important feature that it will employ advanced stealth features, which means in terms of its radar or electronic signature, it will be so low that the enemy radars, enemy aircrafts won't be able to identify or detect them, right? And at the same time, they will also have advanced sensors and weaponry which will able to make it take down enemy aircraft, which relatively is, right? So this is the most important feature of the fifth generation aircraft, that it will have an advanced stealth feature. Now I will tell you basically the difference between the fourth generation and fifth generation aircraft. On your right you can see a picture of Sukhoi M30 MKI, and it has number of missiles loaded on it, which is quite effective when it comes to tackling of threats, right? Similarly, Sukhoi 30 MKI also has the ability to carry BrahMos missile, right? Now on the other side you can see this is a fifth generation aircraft, and this is not carrying any missiles on the outside because it has the capability to carry these missiles inside of its body, because ultimately you are designing this aircraft with a stealth feature, and if you employ missiles on the outside, it will increase its radar signature, making them not a stealth aircraft. So basically the biggest difference from a fourth generation and fifth generation aircraft is in terms of design, because all the weapons, all the fuel, this is carried inside the aircraft body, not outside it, right? So the other features of AMCA will be that it will have a bigger internal fuel tank which can carry excess 6.5 ton of fuel, and this will remain concealed inside the body of the aircraft. Similarly, it will have a weapons which will be carried in the internal weapons bay, which will mean that it will be buried in its belly and not be having any kind of radar signature. And as of now, the cost of this project is estimated to be around 15,000 crore, and we'll see how it goes, right? Now it is expected that AMCA will come in two versions. The earlier version, known as AMCA Mark 1, will fly on the existing 20 kilonewton class engine, which is currently using the engine from General Electric 414 engine, which is also will be used by Tejas Mark 2 aircraft, right? And the subsequent or the newer iterations of AMCA, that is AMCA Mark 2, it will be powered by a stronger engine of 110 kilonewtons, and this will be developed indigenously by DRDO Gas Turbine Research Establishment with collaboration of maybe a foreign defense partner. And the total duration of this aircraft development is expected to take about 10 years from now, and the plans will be to manufacture 5 prototypes first to take the different iterations of the design and compare the capabilities of these prototypes, and the final prototype will be sent to mass manufacturing when the manufacturing of these jets will begin. And it is expected that HAL along with other companies will compete to start manufacturing these AMCA aircraft, which is a fifth generation aircraft, right? Now there was a big development that happened in the month of December 2024. That is, China took world by surprise by testing what is expected to be world's first 6th generation aircraft. Now I told you there are 5 generation of aircraft. So how can a new generation aircraft appear, right? So that is why this brought world to a big surprise. So in this regard, let us understand how 6th generation aircraft will be different from earlier iterations, right? Now several countries, majorly US, European nations, they have already announced the development of a newer generation of aircraft, but China surprised the world by conducting test flights of its 6th generation prototypes that are called as J36 and J50, which are developed by Chinese Chengdu Aircraft Corporation and the Shenyang Aircraft corporations respectively. Now, although there are no publicly declared features of this aircraft, but some experts suggest that it might be operationally manned, which means it will have simultaneously the ability to carry a pilot and not to carry a pilot by flying it automatically. Similarly, it will have advanced engine which will have dual cycle engines, which will allow it to travel at much higher speed, that is hypersonic speed, that is 5 times the speed of sound. Right. Similarly, it will also employ use of energy directed weapons such as laser. So in addition to carrying missiles and guns, these aircrafts are also expected to carry directed energy weapons like laser weapon systems. And also it will have the ability to undertake a suborbital flight, which means a flight much higher than the existing aircrafts. Therefore, it will allow them to escape the existing anti-aircraft missile, making them much more deadly and effective. Right. So this is what is expected, that the generation of aircraft, that is the 6th generation of aircraft, the kind of feature that it will have. Understood? Now, what you need to understand before conclusion of this discussion is the differences in capabilities of Indian and Chinese Air Force. Now, Indian and Chinese Air Force, they have differences in terms of number of aircrafts, and also you understand China has much higher amount of fighter jets as compared to Indian Air Force. And also in terms of capabilities, India's most advanced fighter jet is the Rafale fighter jet, which employs a 4.5 generation technology, whereas China is already deployed its 5th generation aircraft J-20, and it is undertaking the development of 6th generation aircraft also. But where India gains advantage is in terms of experiences and in terms of its air bases, right? Because bases of India located in northern borders, they are located at lower altitudes, which means aircrafts can fly with much higher payload and weaponry, whereas China, where it has the bases located in majorly in Tibet, it is located in much higher altitude, which means aircraft will have a difficulty to fly from these locations, and therefore they'll have to carry lesser amount of weapons. Also, there are significant challenges associated with Indian Air Force also. First, in terms of number of aircrafts, because sanction strength of Indian Air Force is what? It needs to have at least 42 squadrons of aircrafts so that it is able to tackle both Pakistan and China simultaneously. But currently, Indian Air Force only operates 31 combat squadrons. So effectively, it has 11 less squadrons of fighter aircrafts. One squadron has approximately 18 fighter aircrafts. Whereas the Chinese challenge is that they are using high altitude bases, particularly in the region of Tibet, which limits their capabilities to carry payloads, that is missiles, as well as carry the fuel in them, right? So these are the challenges that plague both of these air forces. The major challenge in terms of India is the amount of aircrafts and the technological levels of these aircraft, and that is why development of AMCA, which is the 5th generation fighter aircraft, is very crucial for India. What do you think about it? Do you think India will be able to tackle these threats by making AMC a world-class aircraft? Please let me know in the comments. Also, before concluding our today's discussion, let's see if you are able to solve this PYQ, which appeared in the 2024 prelims examination, and it asked you a question that which of these 3 aircrafts can be categorized as a 5th generation aircraft. Also, let me know the correct answer in the comment section, and I will give you a like if you got it correctly. Okay, and if you want to download the notes, these will be available on my Telegram channel. This is called as ATS Live. So what you need to do, go to our channel, click on the search bar and enter the words ATS Live. You will be able to find the channel. Alternatively, you can also scan this QR code. This will take you definitely to the channel. Subscribe it if you still haven't, and download the notes available, right? So I'll see you again tomorrow. Please have a very good night, and I hope you have understood everything regarding 5th generation aircrafts.